Good morning. So I had some issues with Facebook Live. I had to switch back to the old version to get the camera on my tablet synced up. So today we are doing Justice Rocks, which was originally supposed to be for Week Without Violence, and since that's been postponed, we didn't feel like we wanted to postpone the event, so we decided to carry on because justice and social justice is an everyday issue. All right, so I'm going to turn this so you can kind of see what's going on a little bit. So I have my pile of rocks, all different shapes and sizes. These are already pre-scrubbed with dish soap and dried, so they're very nice and clean. I got a brush and I just scrubbed them really well. Some other things that you're going to need. I actually have 2 cups of water. This is a artist kind of thing where you have one for your whites and very lights, and then you have one for everything else so that your colors stay truer and brighter. So as a palette tray, this is a plastic plate, and you could use something that's like got this nice sheen on it, and then just take your dish scrubby and some warm water, and you can scrub it off this kind of material. I was going to cover it in foil, but we seem to be a little foilless at the moment. I've been foiled. And then I have an artist palette, which I'll be using today, since I decided this plate was pretty with rocks on it. All right, so as far as paint goes, use what you got. I have artist paints here. I have craft paints here. If you had some, if you're not allergic to latex and you have some latex or acrylic household paint, you could use that. You can actually, do cool things with those kinds of paints. But today, I will show you a little bit of difference what an acrylic paint would do versus a art paint. I'll paint like a little thing on each one with the 2 different kinds of paint. Okay, so what I wanted to start today with is an exercise. Here at the Y, of course, we are on a mission. MTV is not a sponsor. I wish, but we're going to start with an exercise. So our mission at the Y is to eliminate racism and empower women. So we fall under social justice. There's different kinds of justice. There's social justice, environmental justice, but with No More Violence Week, that primarily focuses on social justice, violence, abuse. But you're not limited to that today, if that makes you uncomfortable. But it is a very important issue that to our community and to people as a whole. I also have my handy dandy paint towel. This is just a ratty old towel. Doesn't have paint stains on it because it's a new one. I like to use this for drying off my brushes after I rinse them. All right, I've said a million times. So back to social justice. All right, so we have No More Violence Week. And with my pencil and paper, I'm going to sketch up some things and put down some words that I associate with social justice and No More Violence Week. So you could go with straight up no more violence. You could go like, and do a big violence and then nope. You could be savvy and look up a statistic, like how many people experience domestic violence. and put that on there. You could even do a picture of what you think. It could be stick figures even of what you think would be a strong symbol for no more violence. For instance, I could go this is a very crude drawing, so forgive me. Maybe not the best stick drawing, but we want to make sure that you don't have any art fear when it comes to making your creations. So here's this little guy. Stop the violence. He's got like a big hand, and it looks like he's going to go smack this person that is cowering in fear. I'm sure some of you think it looks like something else. I saw it too. But take your time and just kind of think about it. Put on some music that you like, because that's helps stimulate the brain. And what's your favorite color? That could even be a way that you can get into your design. I have, in my little paints that I picked up yesterday, I got one that's pretty close to YWCA persimmon. And then I made sure to pick up the truest yellow I could find, the truest blue, and they have it called this one True Red. I also have a black and white. Now, this would make up all the colors that these would make up all the colors that you actually need to buy. So if you only had a limited amount of funds or a limited amount of space, you can do everything with these colors. To make it easier on myself, I went ahead and did buy a green and a purple, mostly because working with artist paints and craft paints most of my life, I do know that I'll get it, that mixing these two together will not give me this shade of purple. It's a little more complicated than that. I will get a purple, and then mixing these blues and yellows won't give me this really bright green, because this is not a very bright yellow. Then I also picked up a Duraclear satin varnish. This is indoor outdoor, so you can seal your rocks afterwards. And I splurged a little bit because I love the Y. I got this dragon glaze that has a nice shift from gold, red, violet. So I'm hoping that will give me a little bit of oomph that I'll paint over this one. Okay. All right, so those are those. I also have some pretty cool donated colors. Another red and a turquoise and a pretty green and a iced coffee. That's pretty. Okay. So, with all these colors in mind, that helps my brain figure out what I'm going to do. Now, if you have any questions about how to mix a color, kind of like, hey, I've got these colors, I want to make this color, just type it in and I will help you out with as far as mixing up your colors. It's one of the services I offer. Okay, so I think I'm actually going to do one that is not no more violence, but it's extremely important. I'm going to do a rock that features the census, which in Montana, all of you should have received your census by now. They were mailed out from the 12th to the 20th. and I've already filled mine out. It's super easy. I did it online, and it took like 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to draw out my thing because I want this one because for the census, because the census is so important, because it affects how our state is funded by the government, and it helps us gather information and know what about our community. Okay, so I'm going to draw a block letter on my scratch paper. As you'll see later, that my painting is actually better than my drawing. So we have okay, so do I have to use water? Anything we're mixing? The only time you have to use water when you mix is if the paint is super thick. Like if you're using house paint and it doesn't glide on your brush very well, or if you've got an older craft paint or acrylic paint that needs to be thinned, then you can thin it with water. Just do tiny amounts as you go, because you don't want it to become a soup and then just running in all over your rock and be frustrated. So for instance, I bet this one's a little thick because I unscrewed it. It's a little gummy. Let me get this off. I should have done that beforehand. Well, we can share the frustration of packaging together. All right. Oh, that's a mess. Looks like somebody wanted to see for real at the craft store. Yeah. Okay. We'll just put that up on our paper. I actually had some newsprint here at the office, and so I covered my whole table in newsprint. You could use, if you're working in smaller, you could use a paper plate, or you can use your handy paint towel. I have a tendency to be very passionate, so slightly somewhat messy painter, as a friend reminded me of yesterday. All right. And another clue with mixing paint and water is that look at the instructions if they're available on your paint and see if it says it's mixable with water. Everything that I'm going to show you today is mixable with water. If it says enamel, be very careful with mixing it with water, because you can get acrylic craft enamel, and enamels, it could mess with the binding agent. This is not terribly thick, but it is really pretty. Wow, that's going to be really pretty if you can see that. Okay, so another thing about your drawing of, like I put Y census 2020 everyone counts, is I have to make sure it fits on my rock. If you're a very precise person, you can measure this out and then maybe take a piece of carbon paper. I would suggest carbon paper versus tracing paper, because of your rough porous surface. But I'm going to go ahead and take my pencil and draw on my rock. So I'm going to make it a little bit blocky. I don't know if you could see that. You can see my big Y right there. Okay, great. This is also an important step for spacing, That way you don't end up with those tiny crunched letters at the end because you're like, oh, didn't have enough room for everyone counts. So this is a good way to practice to make sure that you have a lot of room, enough room. Anybody who's joined, feel free to add in your comments and questions, and I will answer them as they appear. Okay, so I have kind of this Y census thing going on, and I'm going to have to adjust it because you see right here, I'm kind of on, you can barely see it, it's going on the curve, and I don't really like how that looks. So what I'm going to do is taking a little bit of water instead of burning up my eraser, and got all the graphite off. So let that dry a second and then we can start again. I would love to hear if any of you guys are painting along with me, what kind of things that you're putting on your rocks, because I think that's really amazing that we can sharing this together. Took this opportunity to make my Y even bigger because that way I can put more of that beautiful persimmon color on it that is so pretty. And then when everybody finds it on the rock, when we hide rocks, if somebody sees it, they immediately see that orange Y and go, that's YWCA. Whereas, depending on what you're doing, that color really matters. Other things that are coming up that are really important is Stand Against Racism. And we're still in the March is the month of Women's History. So you could even go as far as like doing women's history things that are important. I won't probably do it on here, but I may end up painting a Jeanette Rankin rock just because this is the year to celebrate the boat. And so that's important. I get a little carried away. I'm better at writing block letters, so I didn't leave room for counts. So I've got Y census everyone, which is fine. You don't have to erase all of it if you make a mistake. But hey, making mistakes is part of the process. And I mean, I've been painting all my life, and yeah, I make mistakes too. Okay. And every time I do this, I kind of go through a different iteration of my design, which I think is fun. I think it's also kind of a fun thought that this rock has had everyone and the Y and census and counts on it, drawn on it multiple times. Kind of like it's like I'm empowering this rock to tell people about the census and how it's important. So stay positive. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is that hiding these rocks. So even though most, some of us are completely quarantined for health purposes or family concerns, if you have somebody who's going out, they're going to go somewhere that people go. And it might be a good place to hide a rock. Like, if I was going to the grocery store, I know everybody's at the grocery store. So put a rock there. Or if you go to the gas station, I mean, things that are still open around your building, because people are still taking walks. People still walk their dogs. So they're going to find them. And that might brighten their day. For those of you who want to keep doing this, there is a Great Falls Rocks page on Facebook. Very friendly folks. And what they do is they paint pretty rocks all year round. Maybe you found some of them. And they take pictures of them and post them in the group when they find them. Or when they paint them. And say, hey, I'm hiding rocks over in Marketplace. And these are the rocks you can find. So people actually go out and be like, oh, I want to see that rock. And there's a spirit of either you rehide it somewhere else so somebody else can enjoy the rock, or you keep it if it's something that you find really precious. Okay. I think I'm going to get it this time. I think I'm going to get it all to fit. Sometimes you got to go through this when you don't have a ruler. So I didn't put one in my pack. Alright, it looks like I am going to have to go on that round corner. And so when you guys have your rocks done, I did put in the event a couple hashtags, Justice Rocks, and you can put that on your rock. And we would like for you to take a picture of it and post it on our Facebook page or our Twitter. And then, Or you can even post them in that Facebook group too, for the rocks. If you're just joining, if you have any questions about materials or the process, just let me know. All right. So for the sake of moving on, my counts is going to be all the way around here. So I've got everyone counts. And then you can even put something on the back. I'm going to put hashtag #JustAsRocks. And then I'll put YWCA Great Falls on the back of mine too, which I should probably go ahead and draw. I thought about doing a stencil for this event. Well, I was going to when it was a live event, when it was going to be a drop-in, so everybody could just put that on there quickly if they wanted to as an option. Okay. Ooh, that ass on Great Falls is going to be a pickle to paint. All right. I'm not sure you can see it, but I put, you can sort of see I put something on there. Justice Rocks and hashtag Justice Rocks and hashtag YWCA Great Falls. All right. Has anybody decided to paint anything that they want to share as far as their rocks go? That would be really fun. Just an idea or anything. Okay, so I also need black because that's one of the YWCA colors. And of course, white. They didn't put any of those little perforated things in here, so it's a little bit of a challenge. Okay. Okay, time for some colors. make sure their paints are nice and shook. This color orange probably didn't see much light of day outside of fall. Oh no, your orange paint is dry. Do you have any red and yellow paint that you can mix together? Or is it completely dry, like hard? Okay. When you're also thinking about what colors you want to paint something, with kids it really doesn't matter. They usually pick colors that are very bright. Is you want to think about if you want to use your adult brain versus the kid part of your brain that just is like, oh, pure fun. You can then take and make sure you have colors that stand out together, like black and white, which you see in the Black Lives Matter. It's very stark, and that works. That's very powerful as far as like contrast goes. You could also base paint your rocks, either with like a spray primer or a spray paint, or just one of your craft paints, and just go from there. Now this is probably going to take a couple coats. Oh, it definitely is. I didn't have this one shook up enough, and so it was a little bit of watery on the end. Let's try this now. Oh, that's much better. Yeah, I already know this is going to take a couple coats, so we'll just have to be patient. And I think that's one of the fun parts of doing something like this, is there's no rush. There's no rush to get it done. We're just sitting here painting our rocks together. Okay. Now I'm just using a round brush, relatively small, like a C10. You can just use, if you got little inexpensive craft brushes, go ahead. If you're going to paint rocks a lot, painting rocks is hard on your brushes, so I wouldn't suggest using your fine art brushes for painting rocks. This little guy has been with me a long time, as you might have seen part of the paint flying, the coating on it. It's still in really good shape, because I like to take care of my brushes, because they make everything so much easier to make art. Like this guy. I might have had him since the late 90s, but you can tell it's all paint chipped, and had to re-glue the ferrule on, and many times I almost thought I lost it, because got into situations where they weren't washed all the way, or other things. So, okay. So, I came into something that you might come into later, but we'll figure out a creative way to fix it together. Because, like Bob Ross says, happy little mistakes. My E. I did not use a block E, so I've got a blob, which is fine. We'll put like a dot of white in there, or if I was really upset about it, I could probably take the end of my little brush here and just kind of very slowly, or even take a relatively dry brush and pick at that paint. Now this is, I think I'm gonna keep picking out this paint because it's kind of like, oh, look at this little dark spot I've got here, and I'm just gonna take my time and get rid of it. Kind of like getting rid of something bad in your life. It takes time, it takes patience. Results may vary. I'll leave it a little wetter this time, see if I can. This paint's drying, so I am competing against time. Okay, so I'm gonna block that real fast. Starting to make some progress on recovering our E. Great thing is about removing mistakes from, or accidents or happenings from your rock is that it's basically sandpaper underneath there. So you're taking this a surface and you're scratching this, pushing this paint that's still wet against this other surface, and we're almost there. We almost got rid of that dark spot that's causing us some anxiety. Alright. Now just a little touch up of the shape around it, because I got some scratch marks. Now if you're used to painting on flat surfaces or smooth surfaces, you're going to notice a change. It's not the same, because things are uneven, things are round or jagged, so it takes a minute. Alright. E is recovered. We saved our E. Okay. I should stick to pictures, not letters, which is totally fine. To know what your strengths are and where you struggle. Okay. R2 came out looking a little bit too much like an A. And that is because I had too much paint on my brush and I put too much pressure down. And I'm using a curly S instead of a curly S, a curly 2 instead of a block 2, which a block 2 is easier to read. I'm just going to go with what I have here. And I'm actually going to paint for the next two a block 2, just so you can see the difference in legibility. And it's something to keep in mind for your designs at home. Had a little bit of splatter. All right, so that's the different kind of 2. See how the difference in legibility is? So that's something to keep in mind when you are making your rocks. I think I'm going to continue with the white because you see it has a very, on this particular rock, since it's not painted, has a better contrast to it. Still too much paint. So we're looking to do more videos in the future, in particular during this time when we're all staying home. And also since our survey that many of you filled out said that you wanted more craft things. So that is something that we would like to honor with everyone. And if there's other activities that you want us to look into currently, just send us a message or put it in the comments, and we'll take a look and see if we can actually make that happen. I'm going to get this orange out. So if you have your paint sitting here for a bit, it's going to start skinning over. It's going to start drying depending on conditions. You can add a little water to it. If it completely skins over, just give it a little pop. Some of the paint that should still be usable is underneath there, and you can just go ahead and use that without wasting paint. Going back over my big Y, and I'm going to make my small Y and every one also orange. maybe. I got caught in a crevice. Give that a little quick blot. Okay, and you can see I have my second coat of orange on the Y and a first coat on the Everyone Y. Not sure how I feel about it. I think it's a part because this particular shade of orange looks pretty weak, the first coat. I might go back over that and paint it in white. We'll see how it looks towards the end. I think I might make counts in black. That way we have, if you look at it, it would be census counts as well. So you know, bring focus across. Okay, so our counts got all the way around there. You know, I'm not too mad about it. It gives it a fun look. It doesn't look like it was painted by a graphic designer, even though I do graphic design at the Y. It's a little fun. It's supposed to be relaxing. It's not supposed to be stressful. It's been a long time since I've painted a rock, so you have to give yourself allowances for that sort of thing. And stay positive when you're doing this. Because ultimately, this is a project about joy, and it's calm and meditative. If you're not feeling as creative, you can look at various designs online, such as Pinterest or other kind of logos and ideas. I mean, you can paint colored ribbons. Like you can do a purple one for, like for the Purple Ribbon campaign. For domestic violence. Now, if there's an organization that, a nonprofit or something that you really are part of their work or believe in their work, you can always make them a little gift of a little rock with their logo. Or even make a little thank you rock that says thank you, and I want to say family promise for what you do. Because we appreciate getting families into homes. Okay. Wow, this orange is really not giving me the love on this first coat. So it's going to look like not much when I show it to you here in a second. Okay, so I've got that first coat of orange on the back and Justice Rock. So you can't even see my orange hardly, but we do know with a couple coats it is going to turn out fine. Now, if you're worried about like a color like this orange not popping through, you can always do a base coat of white underneath that letter. Or if you have a really fine brush, you could outline it. I didn't bring a brush smaller than this one. Mostly because I didn't have a craft one, and I didn't want to ruin it. Okay. Now when you have something like the orange in this rock that is just coat after coat after coat, you can just let it sit and dry and then come back while you're working on another rock, and it's like, oh, like if you're going to use the same color, because I imagine I'm going to use orange somewhere else, and we'll do a test of undercoating it white, see if it makes it pop better, so that way you can see the difference, and I can make the mistakes and you can see what you like better without having to go through all the trouble. Now, one thing I'm doing with brush technique is I usually scrub in my paint into my brush and then turn it, so then I have a nice point to which to paint with. Did you ever work out another orange or another way that you can mix some red and yellow together? Like, I'll just go ahead and Other color combinations that really are striking are red and white. Red and yellow is another very striking one. Green and white's not too bad. It's, you know, if you have a solid, intense color, white usually is a good contrast for visibility. That's why we see it in a lot of logos and sports teams. It's because it's easy to see. Just twist this plastic down. Seems to be a better way of doing this. Well, at least it was that one. Nope. Great thing about using craft paint is, since it's got a little thickness to it, you can literally count out the drops that you're doing. So I'm just going to make an orange, see if I can come up with a better orange. 2 drops of yellow and 2 drops of red. This is cadmium yellow and true red. One of the other art tips that you should think about is paint dries darker than it is when it's wet. So if you have a color that looks a little too bright for what you were thinking, like if it doesn't match necessarily this top when it's wet, it'll be closer to this when it dries. If that's darker. Okay. Alright, so the orange I just made is the H for homemade, and the orange that I bought is the S for store. I can see a little difference here. It doesn't look like a lot of difference is showing up in the camera, other than the store-bought one has a little more yellow, which we could add a little more yellow. But the home mixed one actually is more opaque, so it's less see-through. So I might actually go over all of my orange lettering with the homemade one and see if we can get them to behave a little bit more. And the homemade one's actually a bit closer to the YWCA orange. I don't know about you, but I can already see a difference in the strength of the color. Which is good, because my letters for YWCA Great Falls on the back are fairly small, and even with being careful, they're going to get a little blobby and not so crisp if you have to keep going over such small letters. That's how you can go from, oh, well, that looks nice, but it's a little not, the color's not strong enough to contrast, to blurbs. Okay. Which we will have some blurbage here on the back, which we will take care of creatively versus how we took care of that blobby E. We're actually going to use, I think we're going to use lac to create the little openings in our letters where, like, you know, capital R, just put a little black in where that hole should be, and once it dries really well, once we have the letters how we want them to be. Oh, we have an unintentional, oh, wrong way. We have an unintentional H all the way at the end from the cragginess of the rock. So we will just take our brush and clean it up like we did the E. Something that might also be handy, let's see, it's a little bit better. If you're a heavy dunker into your water like I am, is I also use this brush to roll off the side of my brush, because I'll get water droplets that get stuck up here on the ferrule, and then they'll just run into your paint, and then I'll just onto your painting surface. Okay, so we're going to let my first rock dry, and then we can go on to another design. Now we're going to pick a rock. I think we're going to go with this guy. It's really smooth, and we're going to put a base coat on the front of this one in white. Just gonna grab myself a brush, stir up that white. It's been sitting there for a bit, and then just gonna paint this guy, and we're gonna let that dry. Okay. Now it's going to be streaky. First coat with this big craft paint, which is fine. It's okay. We're going to probably put a second coat on it anyway. So I have gone ahead and I painted it originally on vertically. Now I went over the brush strokes horizontally because I had some really thick lines that were going to create trenches on my rock once it dried, just to get the paint smoothed out. And then I'm going to go back over it in the other direction one more time, because I really just don't want any paint globs. especially in the first coat. I'm going to just go over it and find any sort of thick parts of paint. Just give it a good brushing to where I don't have any more. Alright, and then cover up my thumbprint on either side. If I want the paint to continue to where it's completely colored, completely painted in on these everywhere you can see, I can just take and brush it in when I'm not holding it. Okay, so it has like a completed kind of paperweighty kind of feel to it. Okay. Now I'm going to take another similarly smooth rock here, and I'm going to show you that artist acrylic difference. Give this a nice mix. I've had this sample for a bit. Okay. Now this is heavy bodied, so it's going to be pretty thick. It's supposed to mimic the texture of oil paint. And I already can tell there's going to be a color difference. And just look how it looks differently here to there, texture-wise. And if you ended up using artist acrylic for painting rocks, because some artists do paint rocks as part of the practice. Now I need a little water with that. Okay, I've loaded my brush, and then it's going to be a little thin because I'm okay with doing a couple coats. Now my brain's already like, yes, this is what I know, because I use mostly acrylic paints, artist acrylic paints versus craft paint in my art processes. And I do oil paint as well. So this texture and the way it moves on this brush and on the surface is very pleasant to me. And voila! It's still going to need another coat. It looks pretty solid on the camera, but where I'm sitting, I can still see the gray through it, and that is not my goal. Okay, so I've got an artist one and the craft one. No shame in using either paint or mixture of the both. Alright, I've got this big globby rock. I just really liked it because a lot of people paint on the very flat, skipping stone kind of style rocks, and this chunky boy just needed some love. So, we're actually going to, oh, I already have black out. We're going to base this one in black. We're actually going to make this one I think we're going to make this a missing and murdered indigenous people's rock. So this black background, and we're going to paint a red palm print on it. I'm just going to paint the whole thing black. And before I call this one completely done, I will paint the bottom of it black as well. Look at that chunky boy. Okay. Smooth that with the end of my brush so I don't bend my bristles up. Now when you're cleaning up your brushes, you can use dish soap. I use either a brush cleaner, which you can find at any craft store, or a bar of ivory soap. And the reason I do that is it is better for your paintbrushes than to just dish soap. If it's really dirty, dish soap is a good option, but the ivory will also give you a conditioning effect and allow you to really work into those bristles. Okay, so we got our little black rock. This is a really cool shape rock. I don't know what I want to do with this guy yet. It's a piece of limestone. Now those of you who like symbols, I could definitely paint this one as iris, which is important to the YWCA Great Falls for our Salute to Women, because the iris symbolizes wisdom and courage and goodness, several other things, which just escaped my brain, and I'm going to look that up for you. And you can do something that is more symbolic. Okay. I knew it was close to the clover. Faith, hope, wisdom are some of the meanings. Let me get this out real quick. Yeah, we have faith, hope, wisdom, courage, and admiration, which is pretty like a spot on for our Salute to Women event, our gala that happens in May. The iris is also cool because it comes like in 100 colors, and all the colors of the rainbow, and that goes all the way back to Greek mythology for the goddess Iris, who is the goddess of the rainbow. Pretty cool lady. And so that's also kind of fun to think of that too, because the rainbow includes everybody. So, in every color and light. So it's nice. Okay. Let's see. Now this is definitely cool to touch dry. So we'll give this another coat of the craft white. which the second coat already looks much better. We're filling in those thin spots. Make sure that you run your brush over a couple times to make sure that you don't have any risy bumps in the paint. And then we'll just push that guy to the side. Our artist acrylic one is already dry. Now when it dried more translucent than you would think it would. Alright, let's mix this with a little bit of thinned out part I have there. Which our artist acrylic may actually end up taking as many, if not one more coat than our craft white. So that's also something to think about as far as economy goes and time. Working with these rocks makes me think of the Fraggle Rock Golden Pebble episode, where every year when they have their winter holiday, they pass around this beautiful golden pebble as a gift, and which is really kind of lovely when you think about it, because it's a gift of sentiment, not a gift of worldly wealth, which is kind of nice. So we all have too much stuff anyway. I'd rather, I think was it Mowgli? No, that's well, one of the Fraggles went on, it was one of his little adventures, and he found the rock originally, and he liked it so well, he gave it away to one of his friends so he could enjoy it too. Which was, me being a little bit of a savvy person, really kind of made my day. Okay. Went ahead and painted the bottom of that rock and filled in some other things. Just kind of nice to see a different shape of our little rock. I think I might do this arrangement versus, the other direction. Trying to decide what I want to do with these other rocks. I think this one's going to be just our straight up no more violence. So I think we're going to use this deeper red. So we're just going to do the classic no circle one that we kind of did in our little doodles. That way we can, no misunderstandings about what we're talking about. We'll do the violence might do that. My brain says, oh, you want to do it purple because that's what the purple ribbon is about. But at the same time, that's not a great contrast. Oh goodness, that one exploded. I do have a piece of paper towel up here for emergencies such as these. Okay. We'll go back to drawing it out. That way we have room for violence and we can kind of think about the shape of the letters and then make sure that we have our circle. Now we might want to find something here to draw our circle since our rock's not very big. See, I don't have a compass with me. I don't have like a string that I can kind of make a string compass out of. Let's see. Can's too big. That might just do it. Yep, I think that's gonna work. All right. Go ahead and make sure I have where I can see it. All right. And so then I have my, you can kind of see it at an angle, our circle. Did I get red paint on me? I sure did. That red paint really did explode. Goodness. All right. So I have that. Probably want a straight edge for marking it across. So I'll just take an edge of paper here and just use that to make a straight line. Now I'm doing the circle first because I want to make sure that when I'm planning my letters on here that I know what my boundaries are. Because I don't want violence to just, I don't have much rock beyond that circle anyway. All right, so. Oh, I've run into a spacing issue. Use my handy dandy water and finger eraser to get that graphite off of there. I think part of the problem is the angle that I drew my line in. I'm going to go ahead and take my line out of my center, but preserve my circle. Okay, there we go. Because the problem I was finding was that the particular angle that it was hard to get the letters to pass through it. Which is kind of interesting because when you think about it, it's like, oh, I have to have a thing to get rid of the thing. So. Need my letters. So we're going to probably end this about 12 because that'll give us a good 2 hours together. That way you have time in your day to do other things because it is a Saturday and it is lovely outside. Trial and error. Okay. Okay. So we have our lovely black rock. And just look at our hand, and we have, we're going to make a handprint. I know in their logo that they put a dot for every joint, so it's very recognizable as a hand. So I'm going to take some of that beautiful red. I just kind of scribbled out a hand. You can't even see it because it's so black. But, oh, that's a lot. I'm going to roll that out. And gonna, I might need to base that in white because you can barely see that little bit of red. Okay. Now we won't have to do multiple coats of this. We just need to get a good even coat on our fingers and our palm. Okay. I don't want too much red paint in the palm. in white paint. Now it's not going to be as beautiful, but it's fine. We kind of got our hand design on there, and then we'll take a different portion of this rock. And what I want to do are missing murdered indigenous. Which I might actually put the phone number or the website. I might look that up real fast, because that's something that is very important. Well, there is a Facebook page there. Murdered. Which is usually where I send folks for that. But just getting the symbol out there is important as well. Oh no. Okay. So we have the three coats of artist acrylic and craft acrylic, and they look pretty similar. This one has a little bit, the artist acrylic has a little more sheen, which not really important in this stage of the game, where the craft acrylic is much flatter, feels more chalky. But it's indoor-outdoor, so it's going to be fine. We're going to seal it. And I guess the biggest thing is, beyond what you have, working with what you have, is economy. I mean, I got this one on sale for $1. Even though this was a sample, I had to buy paint to get it. So, and some of those tubes can run $7 a piece, or more, depending on which brand. So, Craft Band it is. Goodness. What we're going to put on there. I think I'm going to do a No More Violence rock just on the white, just purple and white. And then, of course, we'll put our Justice rocks on the back. Goodness, they got this one good. What a day to not have a pocket knife. Ugh. Okay, couple drops of True Blue. I think I'll do 3. It's probably more than I need. And I'm going to take an equivalent looking exploded glob of this deep red, and we're going to no. Let's chew right out. Of course, when you mix a color, when you mix two primary colors together to get your secondary color, and depending on which, if you add more red or more blue in this case, when you're making purple, affects the outcome. And so does the paint quality and shade. So we got, now I haven't added any white to this. This is just straight up color and color. And we're going to do our homemade, store-made comparison. Because one of the things you think about when you're budgeting your craft supplies is time and enjoyment. So if you're frustrated by mixing purple, you can't get the right purple or green, it's okay to buy them. Oh, that one kind of exploded too. Before we get it all over us. Just go ahead and take that same scrap and wipe it up. Okay. Alright, let's rinse this really well. And we'll take this one. Oh, I got my glove of water. Okay. Alright, for our messy little page, we got our home mixed and we got our store mixed. I think you can even tell a difference here. Our home mix actually turned out to be a deep plum color, where the purple I bought is more of a royal or regal purple. So that's good to know. Okay, so I went ahead and based my circle for our violets with the circle and slash, and then I will just redraw on my letters because this is actually much smoother and easier to work with. This is actually the moment where I just look at this rock and I realize that violence has the word vile in it. Well, if you spelled it correctly, it doesn't, but I just dyslexic did that whole thing, and goodness. Well, looks like I got violent with my rock. So I have a smudgy that I cannot erase off of this artist acrylic. So I'm just going to put a little quick single coat, nothing heavy. It's the magic eraser. And there we go. It's erased. We'll let that dry. Our white is drying here. I just want to get one of these done before we say goodbye today. Got that brilliant red. Oh, that's much better. See how that's much easier to see. It reads much better. Okay. I still think that it's going to need 2 coats for us to really get that to pop. I might go over with the brighter red after this coat dries thoroughly. That way it creates its own shading that way as well. Okay. Alright, let's look at our designs and see what else we got. Our Y Census 1 dried. And let's go ahead and I'll show you those little, because you can see that our A's and our R's and stuff are missing our little dot, because we had to go over it a couple times. Oops, okay. Now you want to make sure that you don't have a lot of paint on your brush, that you have it nice and twirled to a nice fine point, as far as you can get it. Okay, so we got our little dots in there. I have my brush rolled really tight and just with the not a huge amount of paint on it. So, oh, there's a hair in my brush. Okay, then we're just going to take, and I think I'm going to add a little fine outline to the YWCA Great Falls, just so it pops a little bit more. That's what we're all about. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I've got going on so far. So we're just kind of giving a little outline shadow. It doesn't have to be as thick as it on the W, because what I've got on the hashtag and the Y is actually closer to a dry brush, because I have really taken out a lot of the paint. So I have very fine control, even though I do not have a super fine brush. It's all about loading the brush. Now this is a part where you just need to breathe and know that you're painting a bumpy rock, and that even if you have your brush loaded right and you're being patient, that you're just going to sometimes hit it in the rock and have to go touch up with a part of the original color. And that's okay. It's really okay. Oh, I didn't roll that. There we go. I'm trying to get this one done before we say goodbye today for this event. Oh no, my tea is looking kind of goofy. Kind of looks like a peg or a nail. Oh, my brush is getting a little dry. So even when you have your brush shaped the way you want, and it gets a little thick, just go ahead and rinse your brush out and kind of dry it off a little bit, and then just go back into your paint and you get much finer, thinner lines. You don't need a lot of moisture, you just need enough to help the paint flow. Oh, that S in the crack. Well, that's fine. So we went ahead and lined up our Great Falls. You can see it pops a little bit better. It's I still have some places I need to go touch up the orange because crevices and things, which is no big deal. I got this. Give that a nice little twirl. And then we can take care of that spot on that T. We can reclaim a little bit of that F. Oh, and that leg of the A. It's missing a leg, it's all black. And that's a little W's got a little bit of excess black compared to everybody else. And so that's a little quick touch up. Oop. Here we go. Got our little A back, and the F's a little more like an F instead of a black and orange blob. And there we go. Got our YW Census, and we know the difference between our acrylic, artist acrylic and craft acrylic. We learned how to base coat something and coat something on top, and hopefully you came out with some designs that you want to paint for No More Violence Week, or any other social justice causes that are very important to you, because at the YWCA we are eliminating racism and empowering women. And thank you for watching, and I will see you guys the next event. Have a great afternoon. Bye. And